Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
We hope everyone is well. As usual, my name is Kashif Osman, and I'm joined by Imam Muammar on our daily Left My Heart at the Masjid webcast. Today, we have an exciting topic of mind. We have the Salah in pandemics and Salah overall, inshallah. So Imam Muammar will be giving us a wonderful presentation on that. Imam Muammar, how are you today?
Alhamdulillah, I'm doing well. Hope you are.
I'm glad you're
and
here
I hope
today.
everyone is doing well as well, inshallah. May Allah protect you all and protect your families.
Ameen, ameen, inshallah. Would you like to start us off with a quick dua, inshallah?
Sure.
And then we'll get into things?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashraf al-mursaleen. Nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim tasliman kathira. Allahumma barik lana fima razaqtana. Allahumma arzuqna al-khayra kullah. واصرف عنا الشر كله اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه اللهم يا رب العالمين اصرف عنا البلاء والوباء اللهم ارفع عنا البلاء والوباء اللهم ارزقنا العلم اللهم ارزقنا العلم التام وارزقنا نشره بين عبادك يا رب العالمين اللهم آمين.
Ameen, ameen. As usual, we're always taking everyone's questions via the YouTube chats, via Instagram, and via all our other social media. I have a couple of questions in mind for Imam Muammar today, specifically on the topics of Salah, and especially during this time where we don't have access to the Masjid for Jummah and these kind of things. So I'm just going to kick it off, and I'd love to hear everyone else's questions. Imam Muammar, would you mind, what were the religious excuses that made it permissible for us to forgo prayer in this circumstance and in circumstances in general? What are the religious excuses that make it permissible to skip Salah or to forgo Salah?
Sure. So inshallah ta'ala, as I will inshallah read the answers for you as I have prepared it for you, and then we will elaborate on it more. And I promise that the answers will be shared with you. Kashif will share them with you, inshallah ta'ala. So you don't have to panic taking notes and what have you. I want you just to focus more on understanding the concept from me, and then you will have all the notes prepared for you. So I'm kind of spoiling you tonight, inshallah. So the religious concessions, we call them, that rukhsa in Arabiya, of course, the only one that has the absolute right to give us concessions on religious acts is the legislator himself, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that legislated for us our way of life and our deen, and He's the only one that actually makes exceptions of the general rule. So everything that we will talk about tonight is within these boundaries. Allah legislates, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives excuses and gives exceptions. Very similar to what you all familiar with in the month of Ramadan, we're all obligated to fast. There are those of us who are not able to fast, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives that concession, and there are ways to make up for that shortcoming or that inability to do the fasting and what have you. But the external prayer or the Jum'ah prayer, we have to make sure the followings are do exist. So first is that the excuse or the concession has to be real and not imaginary. So it cannot be something that we are suspecting or we are assuming, but rather it is actually real. It is physically real, and it is on the ground, and the excuse is there. It's not just our own assumptions or our own reading of it. Second is that the excuse and concession cannot be postponed or pushed aside. So what does that mean? It means that there is physically nothing you can do to push that excuses away. Examples of these are the typical examples in our religion: fear, severe cold, rain, severe wind, earthquakes, volcanoes, and so many similar natural disasters that you are aware of. These are physical things, they are real, and you cannot push them away. It is not something that pertains to you personally, but rather it is It pertains to everybody in the community around you. So these are the examples of if these two conditions exist, real, and it's not something within your hand to push it away or postpone it, then you have the concession to forego prayer, the congregational prayer at the masjid, or the Jum'ah prayer at the masjid. But the salah never drops. It's not mandatory to be done in the masjid, but we still have to do it at our own homes or places of work. So these are the two conditions, and we brought examples of what these conditions relate to, like severe fear or severe rain or all those natural disasters.
Alhamdulillah. So you mentioned severe fear and potentially the eating of raw garlic. Now, do those tie into this? Is coronavirus considered one of those excuses? Under which category would it fall?
So that's a good example, and this is where we use the what we call analogy. Analogy is in Arabiya qiyas, and a lot of time the scholars, as you know, our deen has been prescribed upon the ummah, humanity at large, to serve them at all their times. Yani it's not just for a specific time, but rather it serves all humanity at large throughout their era of life, whatever time that they have existed in. So with that, we cannot have books with volumes and volumes and volumes of detailed, okay, if rain happens, if hurricane happens, this is what you do, but rather general outlines.
It's a little bit vague so that we can fit it to the terms.
Right. Exactly. And these general outlines are what we call the main objective of what we follow in our legislation, and scholars make what we call qiyas on it. They do the analogy of saying, okay, this is similar to that, so the same ruling would apply. With that, it has been reported that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, if you, Kashif, or if I actually end up eating raw onion or raw garlic, you love it, you like it, it's very healthy, but everybody knows that as you digest it in your stomach,
it comes
out with really a very
foul odor,
very, very strong, to a point that it really bothers the people around you in the masjid. Right. So Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, if any of you end up having to eat that raw garlic or onion, please stay away from the Masjid of Allah, the houses of Allah. And that really reflects that, because nothing except the fact that you're going to bother people around you, you're going to bother angels. So with that simple example of something that is halal, something fresh, something that is very healthy, but then because it might bring a semi-harm to your people around you, you're asked not to come to the masjid, let alone for a serious pandemic like the coronavirus. Right. This is something that actually is spreading, and it's causing major sickness to people, and as you can see, it's a major pandemic. An onion makes you stay away from the masjid, then by all means any kind of pandemic would actually allow you with a full concession to stay away from the masjid.
Alhamdulillah. As in that I might bring some harm to my neighbor if my breath has this garlic, it might take away from their salah. If I come with coronavirus to the masjid, it's causing that same kind of harm to my neighbor.
Absolutely. Yes.
Sticking on this topic for a second, and fortunately Imam Omar has not prepared this question, but talking about harms we've seen in the community, how did you feel when you saw Masjid al-Haram, the Kaaba, Masjid al-Nabawi closed and empty? What was your first true emotion when you saw that?
It's really a heartbreaking, no question about it. I don't know if there is really any word to describe it. You're gonna make me cry now. So as I'm really attached to this and going every year and seeing the beautiful scene of the Kaaba, and really people in all walks of life, you're being jammed, you're being boxed, you're being squished, and all of a sudden now you see this scene of no one in the haram. It just breaks your heart.
It really does. It really does. It's really tough. Another thing that kind of broke my heart was that we didn't have Jummah the past 2 Fridays. So what are some of the religious excuses that make it permissible for us to forego Jummah in these circumstances, or in circumstances in general?
Sure, that's a very good question. And from a fiqhi point of view, I want you to apply the exact same thing that applies to the 5 congregational prayers, applies exactly to the rulings of Jummah. Same excuses that we said. If the excuse is real and it's something that you have no control of pushing it or postponing, what that means is that if it's something personal, you have class, you have a meeting, you have an appointment, this is something within your hand. You can push aside, you can postpone. So that does not give you an excuse. But if it's something like what we're going through, something that's not within your control, so it's real and it's not within my control to reschedule or rearrange, and it does bring harm, as we said, with the garlic and onion. And by all means, this pandemic is way more serious than the garlic and onion. So the same applies to Jum'ah prayer. Okay. Especially with this type of pandemic, and the biggest problem with it is mass gathering.
Getting all people in one room together.
And that's really what Jum'ah is all about. Jum'ah is where to bring people together. They socialize together. They do everything together. They pray together. They listen to the khutbah together. They gather afterwards together. So the nature of Jum'ah attracts big gathering. And we have a pandemic that actually goes against the essence of gathering, because this is how viruses spread. So by all means, that gives you the excuse to forego the congregational prayer because of the nature of bringing people together and close to each other. And also because of the nature of the Jum'ah prayer, bringing masses of people together in one closed place.
That's truly an amazing feeling to see all of our neighbors, the entire ummah that it feels like, at Jummah on Friday days. That's a good lesson to learn, that I should not schedule my biochem classes for Friday at 3 o'clock.
That's right. This is what you get when you learn more into the deen. So you cannot relax your personal agenda.
Exactly. Now, is it permissible to close the mosques and suspend the 5 daily prayers along with Jummah due to the spread of the pandemic?
So that's an excellent question, because we want to differentiate between 2 things. One is what I personally, as a Muslim, individually have as a concession and excuses, and what the community at large, including building masajid and offering the prayer at the masajid.
It's 2 different levels.
It's 2 different levels. By all means, the relaxations are way more flexible and way more lenient when it comes to the individual level, because you have your own excuse, your own level of hardship. But to go to the level of community and communal decisions, that's a different level, which requires more depth of more serious reasons why you want to close the house of Allah itself. So if we would to just imagine this coronavirus and look at it, and I'm just saying for a theoretical point of view, just for the sake of discussion, if this virus did not have the issue of spreading because of masses and because of touching, and it was just a virus that only gets spread by a mosquito bite.
It was malaria, for instance.
Or malaria, for example.
Exactly.
That would not give us an excuse to shut down the masajid.
Okay.
Because we can always control bugs inside the buildings. You can always treat the masajid with something that would kill all the bugs, all the mosquitoes and what have you. And it would eliminate that risk. So you're not, you are in no position to close the houses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So because you have a way to control it.
Right.
But the nature of this virus being so subtle, so unknown, so slow in showing its symptoms, that someone can be infected, but as healthy as it could be, you don't even know. With all these factors coming together, that gets you to the level of communal level where you can take decisions. And in my opinion, not just can take decisions, I feel that you are Islamically obligated to do that, because we know that Islam comes to always preserve the soul and to prevent people from getting sick. That's why in general, even in normal days, if someone is sick, is to avoid the masjid, right? Because you cannot cause harm to others. Saying that, then it becomes obligated on people, communities who are running the masajid to close it, because if they don't and they allow gatherings, they are actually part of spreading harm into society, and there is no control how to stop it. It would be few individuals that come to pray, and then they would go home.
Right.
And then they would pass it on to their spouses, to their children, to their parents, to their grandparents, and so on and so forth. And that is absolutely not acceptable in Islam. So that's why you see globally that major Muslim countries have decided to go with that decision.
Exactly. So it's not just a decision we made in IAR, but it's a decision that was made all around the world.
Absolutely.
We've just received a question from Sister Wajiha Barakat out of Charlotte, alhamdulillah.
MashaAllah.
We mentioned the excuses to miss Jummah that were in and out of your control. Now, say someone is a hospital worker and they don't have control over their schedule, or someone in general does not have control and they're forced to come to a work meeting during that time. Would it be permissible to skip Jummah at that time?
Okay, so this question pertains to an individual, not communal, which we said it's the level of rulings and restrictions, are way more lenient and easier. So the answer would be is that if it's something more of occasional, something that happens once a month, once every 2 months, where the caretaker cannot get out of a schedule that is going around the whole staff and everyone has to take their share, that is inshallah ta'ala excusable, and that gives a concession. But if it's a trend, if someone is like skipping Jum'ah very frequent because of such thing, this is not acceptable.
Okay, it's very good to know. Now, getting back to our corona-focused questions here. Is this the first time that in the Sunnah of the Prophet and his companions that there was the foregoing of Jummah and the congregational prayer, tying back to how we felt about Masjid and the Kaaba shutting down? Is this the first time in history that's happened, or has this happened before?
It did happen before, and inshallah ta'ala, if I will inshallah ta'ala work with Kashif to send you, I'm gonna see, because I definitely have it in Arabic, but I'm gonna see if I can find the same article that I have read in Arabic is in English. I will inshallah pass it on. Inshallah. It's really very helpful and very informative. It just gives you throughout history from the time of Prophet Muhammad up to today how many times Masjid and the Haram itself was closed.
Wow, so it's happened a couple of times throughout history.
Yes, it happened, more than a couple of times, several times. With reasons, of course, with very legitimate reasons. But it's very informative, and it really gives that ease at heart that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the whole concept of our faith and deen is to preserve our souls and our intellect, our minds, and our health in order to worship Him, right? So there is the ultimate objective of divine, and that is to submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with intellect and with absolute health, so you can submit while you are fully charged, not while you are tired and burdened. And because of that, Allah made the legislation to go all around preserving the intellect and the soul in order to preserve the deen itself, the faith itself.
Alhamdulillah.
So yes, it did happen in the past, and inshallah, if I have chance to find it in English, I'll pass it on.
We'd love to see the
you.
article.
Inshallah.
We'll send it out, inshallah, to the group as well.
Inshallah.
No, during these times that the masjid was shut down, is that when they had the change in the call to prayer? Because I think seeing somewhere in this whole corona pandemic, Kuwait changed their call to prayer. Instead of saying, come to prayer, they would say, pray in your homes. Mm-hmm. Is that something that happened throughout history?
Yes,
before?
so I'm going to summarize. This is something that you will find it very helpful. So to link the two answers together, did it happen in the past? Yes. So let's talk about actually the legislation itself, because the most important thing for us to build on and to take analogy and qiyas is to see if it actually happened during the time of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. So we do not have an absolute specific incident where Prophet ﷺ said there is no Jum'ah, but we do have an incident that inshallah ta'ala I will share with you, that
and we'll share with everyone as well,
and we will share with you inshallah ta'ala. So I'm going to read for you the narration, and then I will explain it to you and how to make the analogy. So it was reported that Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas reported that he said to the mu'adhin is the person calling to prayer, on a rainy day, when you announce in the call to prayer, I testify that there is no God but Allah. I testify that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is the messenger of Allah. After you say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. He told them, instead of saying, Hayya ala salah, the call to come to prayer, to come to the success, to come to the houses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He told him, say, pray in your houses. The narrator, that is Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas, said that the people disapproved of it. People went really in disapproval, because it actually happened that this happened on a day of Friday. So he called the person to say, instead of Hayya ala salah, come to success, come to the prayer, he's told him to pray at home, pray at your houses. So people went into disapproval. They were not really comfortable. This is Jum'ah day, and this is Jum'ah prayer, and here you have one of the top knowledgeable Sahaba, that is Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas, and he is very well known, one of the top scholars of Islam, and one of the most narrators of a hadith upon Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when people went into disapproval, Ibn Abbas, and as you all know, I think most of you know, Ibn Abbas happens to be also the cousin of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but he was among the most knowledgeable. Ibn Abbas said, are you astonished at what I did? He, the messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who is better than I, did it, and walk in mud and slippery ground. So this is narrated in the authentic narrations of the hadith of Bukhari and in Muslim as well. So the way that you have this as a proof that it did happen during the time of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is that the narrator himself, the cousin of Prophet ﷺ, one of the top knowledgeable companion of Prophet ﷺ, when he did what he did, and he told people, don't come to Jum'ah prayer and pray at your houses, pray at your place. And remember, it was not because of pandemic. It was because of heavy rain. And the mud it's very muddy, very slippery, very difficult for people to make it. And not only difficult, it's dangerous. People would slip, people would fall, a lot of consequences would happen. So the proof here is the statement of Sayyidina Ibn Abbas when he said, are you astonished at what I did? The one who is better than me did it himself, which is Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And from this hadith, we know that it actually happened during Prophet Muhammad ﷺ's time. but it just didn't get reported. But we got it reported through this incident, and all the scholars agree that the Sahaba, the companions, are absolutely fully trustworthy. So he will never, and that is the cousin of Prophet ﷺ, he will never say the word, "Are you astonished at what I did? The one who is better than me did it." The scholars agree that Sayyidina Ibn Abbas would never say that unless it actually did happen during the time of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, because he will never say it, the one who is better than me did it, without this actually happening. So from that, we have the answer of yes, we do have historical proof that it did happen during the time of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. We have a proof that one of the top scholars, Sayyidina Ibn Abbas, did it himself and told people that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ himself did it. And it was for a reason of bringing some harmful consequences to people, but it's not in any way coming close to the harm that a pandemic would bring to people. So that reflects this beautiful deen. So yes, Allah wants us to pray. Allah wants us to go to the Masjid. Allah wants us to go to Jum'ah. Allah wants us to be together. Like Allah wants us to fast in Ramadan, whatever. But then you have natural disaster. You have things that would come your way to prevent you from doing your normal schedule of submitting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is where Allah gave us the excuse to use the concessions. And we are going to learn actually later on, do we really need to take the concession, or can we forego the concession itself and just stick to the hardship itself or the normal way of performing? Inshallah, we will cover that because that's something very important, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah. I think this goes back to what you mentioned in the beginning of analogies, and that they didn't have snow in the time of Muhammad ﷺ and the Sahaba, but now we shut down the masjid if there's a heavy snowstorm. Mm-hmm. And that same analogy applies in that there's a fear for the people, there's a safety issue.
Right.
Unless maybe it says somewhere that it snowed in the time of in the desert.
No, that's how you take the analogy. So being that it was heavily raining and it was causing the roads to be very slippery and muddy, this is how the scholars do the analogy and just take from it. So snowstorm would apply, heavy gusty wind that is actually causing power lines to fall on the street. Everything applies. Anything that would come to harm people. So anytime anything would come to harm, again, remember, to disrupt the intellect and the safety of the healthy body of a believer so they can connect well with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then the concession would apply.
Okay, it's very good to know. And so, as we just mentioned, that is it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us these concessions. He gives us these mercies and He forgives us. Is it, in certain circumstances, better to forgive the circumstance and not forgive the circumstance, but forgive the concession or ignore the concession and try and elevate our taqwa level, get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by enduring the hardship that He's given to us?
Excellent. So this is something that I meant to discuss tonight because this is something very important and it can apply in many other rulings in your life. Like during the time of Ramadan, you have the concession to actually break your fast during travel. Some people will say, yeah, I know that I have the concession to break my fast during Ramadan itself, but I don't want to. They have that concession. But the problem would happen if foregoing the concession would actually bring harm to that person. So if someone is on travel, long travel, and it causes major difficulties and burden on that person, severe hunger, severe thirst, major migraine headache, chronic illnesses or what have you, body aches and what have you. It's a long trip. And a person would still say, you know what, I know I have the concession, but I want to show Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I am a righteous person. So I want to push myself. Is this the right way to go? The answer is no.
Okay.
Because again, the legislator himself, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to tell us, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ أَن تُؤْتَى رُخَصَهُ كَمَا تُؤْتَى عَزَائِمَهُ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves for us to actually exercise and entertain the concessions that He allowed us to do, as He loves us in normal situations to apply what is mandated.
Right.
What is must. So He loves for us when He tells us, okay, take a break, relax, slow down. He loves to see that in us, that we are actually taking it and we're actually exercising the concession. So we're going to go through also another story to use it as a proof that in our pandemic, is it really an obligation on us to really take the concession and to exercise the concession? Or is it more righteous, more taqwa level for us to push ourselves and not to worry about anything and to gather anyway in the masajid, thinking that Allah will preserve us because we're pushing ourselves not to close the masajid, not to fear anything, and we want to keep our prayers no matter what it is, no matter what the news says, no matter what the pandemic is causing around the world. Nothing is going to stop us from prayer. First of all, that attitude is wrong because of what we mentioned in the hadith of Sayyidina ibn Abbas. There is no people more righteous than Prophet Muhammad himself. There are no more people righteous than the companions themselves, and they themselves entertained and exercised the concessions. That's one. Second, this story that I want to share with you.
I love the stories.
Yeah, because this is how we get all the answers. So inshallah ta'ala. It was reported that Jabir ibn Abdullah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with him, and with them of course all, narrated, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam left for Mecca during the year of the opening of Mecca, or they call it the conquest of Mecca, in Ramadan, and he and the people with him fasted until he reached a valley of Qura, and he then called for a cup of water, which he elevated to show everyone so that the people could see it, and then he drank. Afterwards, he was told by some of the companions around him that some other people had continued to fast, thinking that this is the righteous way to do it. I'm going to push myself. And he then, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, said, those, and he is referring to those who have continued fasting and did not break after even they saw Prophet ﷺ breaking his fast. He said those are the disobedient. That first of all, it is Ramadan. Right. It's one of the blessed months of the year. It is mandatory on us to fast. So they were fasting, Prophet ﷺ, along with his companions, but they were on travel, so they had the concession to break the fast.
They had the ability to do so. Yeah.
Right, but they didn't. And they started while while they were fasting, and they kept going and going. And it got really, really, really hot. And it became before Maghrib. So now you're talking about almost the end of the fast. Wow. Some of the Sahaba brought to the attention of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ that there are people who are about to faint. They're going through a lot of difficulties, but they would not break their fast, even though they have the concession to break their fast. But they don't want to break their fast because you did not break your fast. So they're taking you as a role model, right, because they're thinking you're the level of righteousness. So this is where Prophet Muhammad ﷺ actually left the cup of water to show everybody. And that's the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And drank water to show everybody that, we can never allow hardship to push people away from the objective of divine, and that is to submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with absolute passion, and to push yourself is good, but to never harm yourself, and to never push yourself to a point where it ends up going to the other extreme of damaging your body or causing it to go through major extreme difficulties. So this is where Prophet ﷺ wanted to show a great lesson, to actually drink in front of everyone, despite the fact that most of the day have been gone and they can actually push themselves to Maghrib. That's one thing. Prophet ﷺ is the role model. He's the Prophet of Allah. He can always say, you know what? I have heard that some people are going through major difficulties of continuing their fast. Go ahead and I give you the order to break your fast. I'm going to continue as a Prophet of Allah because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helps me so.
Right.
So I'm going to push myself, but that does not apply to you. He didn't do that. He didn't say that. He did not choose to go with the way of to push himself, but rather wanted to show that this faith, this way of life comes to make things easy for people and not to push and not to teach them to try to push themselves to the limit. That's why he publicly, in front of everyone, drank water. Now, the hadith doesn't stop there. The hadith comes to show that some of the companions came to Prophet ﷺ and said, you know, some people actually pushed themselves. They want to continue until Maghrib. And they saw you drinking, but they thought that it's going to be more religious for them and more righteous for them to push themselves. You know, it's almost the end of the day. So Prophet ﷺ meant to say 2 times in front of everyone, those are the disobedient ones. Those are the disobedient ones, because I have drank myself. And Prophet ﷺ is the most righteous one to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he took the concession because he wanted to show everyone that preserving your soul and preserving your nafs and your body and your health is the most important thing, and you should never risk that and push yourself to a point where you can actually risk your health. Right. And risk this precious thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed us with. So from this example, we learn that it is not necessarily
better to ignore the concession and do what we think has a higher taqwa level, but to take the concession that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us.
That's right. So taking the concession is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves to see in us, and it is absolutely not necessarily that whenever you push yourself to the limit that it's more righteous. And that's the proof for it of what we just shared together.
SubhanAllah. Now, we mentioned that there have been previous episodes and times, and we can use some analogies to explain about the masjid closing down of a quarantine such as this, where everyone must stay in their homes, shelter in place. Has there ever been like that? Does Islam ever promote that idea?
So does Islam promote the idea of staying away from danger, from pandemics, exactly. The spread of pandemics, and to actually isolate yourself and to do the concept of quarantine? By all means, yes. Not only that it promotes it, it demands it. Because the story that you mentioned where it happened during the time of our beloved Khalifa Umar ibn al-Khattab, where a plague happened in the Sham area, in the Syria, greater Syria area. Okay. Close to Syria, Lebanon, and Palestine. So this is where it's regional, of course, it's not global. One of the places called Amwas really was affected by this plague. And from it, we learned the hadith of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, where actually Sayyidina Umar was looking for any Sahabi that has any proof, because he himself thought that I don't want to enter that village. One of the companions told him, why would you not enter the village? Because entering the village, it's all in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is where we learned that one of the Sahaba came to actually narrate for us and to teach us the saying of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If you would to hear about any place that has a plague in it or any pandemic in it, and you are in it already, you're already quarantined, you're already isolated in it, the order from Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is not to leave out of it.
Okay.
Again, because you're going to cause this spread to many others. And
Take it back to healthy people.
Right. Instead of it being contained, now it's going to be easily spread. And he said, those who are outside of that village should not, and that's a mandate, should not and must not enter that place. From this saying of our beloved Prophet ﷺ, we learn that not only that Islam promotes quarantine concept, but rather demands it. Because again, remember, everything pours back about preserving the health,
exactly.
the nafs. The spread of diseases is not something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to see in or being caused by our own hands.
Right.
But rather, if it's something outside of our control, then like what happened now, but we are obligated to contain it. We're obligated to suppress it. And that's why it becomes an obligation upon us to do all the precautions, including, unfortunately, the fact that you had to suspend the congregational prayers and the Jum'ah prayers because of the serious risk that it might bring along with it, of that mass gathering.
SubhanAllah, it's amazing that we have such proofs and evidences of things that we would not think even would ever occur in our times. SubhanAllah. Now that the masjid's closed, Jummah has been suspended for a time, is there a permissibility for us to make our own Jummah prayer at home? Perhaps I get my father and my mother together and we all say, I'm going to give the khutbah today about why I need a bigger allowance. Is that something that's permissible during a natural disaster or pandemic?
So that's now becoming a very popular question.
Tell Muhammad to get the khutbah.
So it is very popular now because it's being practiced. And this virtual Jum'ah khutbah and virtual Jum'ah prayer is being very popular now around the nation. And a lot of questions are coming about the permissibility of doing such thing. So alhamdulillah, I have detailed the answer for you on the document, but just to share it with you really quick. The answer that we come to adopt and to practice is no. It's not permissible to do a virtual Jum'ah for, I would say, two major reasons and two major proofs.
And just so we go on, a virtual khutbah would be the Imam at the Masjid behind the Minbar live streaming this and us watching it at home.
The questions are coming about virtual khutbah and prayer. Of course, virtual khutbah, just to listen to the khutbah, anyone can do that. But the question is coming, can I actually listen to the khutbah with the intention of attending Jum'ah?
Oh, okay.
And then when the Imam gets to pray, I'm going to pray behind him, but behind my computer screen. Okay, that's virtual. Even though maybe many miles between me and the Imam physically. That's the question we're talking about. And that's where we said the answer is no. Definitely listening to the khutbah is something great and virtuous if that's a possibility. But the answer would come, can I pray Jum'ah at home following the Imam, or even gathering my own people at my own house and praying Jum'ah? The answer is no for, as I said, two reasons and two proofs. One of them is that we already mentioned. So the first proof that we mentioned is the story of the cousin of Prophet Muhammad, one of the most knowledgeable companions, Sayyidina Ibn Abbas. If that was something, so let me stop here. Let me take you a little bit back so we can go in order. So let's go back to the times of Mecca, the 13 years of the times of Mecca where Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was in Mecca. And as you all know, that was a very, very difficult, trying times where Muslims were suppressed, were persecuted, were tortured, and they were not allowed to publicly announce their faith and their ibadah and worship acts. So actually, Jum'ah prayer was prescribed during these days, during the days of Mecca, not during the days of Medina.
During the hardships.
The hardships. So it was actually prescribed during the times of Mecca. The order and the mandate was given to the companions, but Prophet Muhammad ﷺ himself did not pray it because the conditions of Jum'ah are different than the conditions of the congregational prayer. Jum'ah means mass gathering, to bring many people of the community together to listen to the khutbah and pray. They should be gathering together in one place. They should be listening to the khutbah. They should be following the imam with 2 rak'ahs and what have you. So it has conditions to it. So because these conditions were not met during the time of Mecca, first of all, because of the fear that Prophet ﷺ does not want to gather his Sahaba in one public place, because they are going to be tortured and persecuted and what have you. So that's a major reason why he didn't actually perform Jum'ah himself, even though it was mandated during the time of Mecca. Now, the proof comes is that, okay, we understand he did not gather people because of fear, because of the inability to bring people in masses together, because he didn't want people to gather in one place and one spot. So the people of Quraysh would not, have an easy target and catch them all and persecute them and torture them and what have you. Now the proof here is not only that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ did not perform it during the times of Mecca, but he never told his companion, you know what, we should pray Jum'ah, but because of fear, we cannot pray it. Because of other consequences, we cannot pray it. Because of the harm that it might bring or come your way, we cannot pray it. But you know what? Go ahead and pray it at your own houses. He didn't say that.
He didn't say that.
So he did not actually command his Sahaba to go ahead and pray it at their own homes. That's proof number one, that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was able to tell his Sahaba, you know what, it doesn't matter. You are 1 or 2 people or 3 people or 4 people at your own homes. Pray Jum'ah on your own, because we cannot do it in public gathering. So go ahead and do it at home. Now, we learn from our deen that if a ruling is mandated, like Jum'ah was mandated, right, the ability to gather together was not there, so it was not performed and conducted. That's understood. But there was an ability to pray it on their own at their own homes, because no one would see them in their own homes, like they used to pray their congregational prayers and the dhikr and to learn Islam secretly. But he did not tell them that. So that's proof number one, that Jum'ah has different conditions, that congregational prayer. So it has, these conditions have to fully met. If they're not fully met, then it doesn't get conducted. That's proof number one. That's in the early days of Mecca. Proof number two is what we shared together about Sayyidina Ibn Abbas, the cousin of Prophet ﷺ. Now, this comes way later. Remember, we said that's after the time of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, when the story that I shared with you, being very muddy, very slippery, it's heavily raining. It was heavily raining. So he called upon the mu'adhin, the one that calls for the adhan, tell people to pray at home. Now, all the scholars agree that people prayed at home, Dhuhr prayer, 4 rak'ahs, not Jum'ah. So he didn't tell people, you know what, we should have prayed at the Masjid, but because it's rainy, it's muddy, it's slippery, I'm gonna use as the ruler here, as the one that gives the hukum and the ruling, I'm going to give you the concession of staying home. Don't come to Jum'ah, because it brings with it risk if you come physically. Now, if praying Jum'ah in small groups was allowed, he could have easily told the mu'adhin and tell people to pray home Jum'ah, right? He could have told people, because you're not coming to the big place, pray Jum'ah at your own houses. But he didn't. He just told his scholar, to the mu'adhin, to tell people to pray at their houses, and they prayed Dhuhr 4 rak'ahs, which give the understanding that if Jum'ah does not get conducted with the strict conditions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted it to be met, then it does not get conducted or performed anywhere else except with the conditions being met. If the conditions cannot be met, then it gets prayed what? 4 rak'ahs,
4 rak'ahs like
as Dhuhr prayer. But you still would have the reward as of Jum'ah, because you had the intention to pray Jum'ah, and you had every intention, and you were physically fit, and you wanted to do it, but something outside of your control, remember, something real, physical, and it's beyond your control, prevented you from performing Jum'ah. So you prayed it 4 rak'ahs as Dhuhr prayer. You will get the reward as if you have prayed it full Salatul Jum'ah, inshaAllah ta'ala.
Alhamdulillah. Just making a note here of Jummah. Now, with this regard, and with the masjids being closed and unavailable for Salah, what is my duty as a Muslim where the masjids are closed and there's a pandemic across the world? Do I have a special duty right now as a Muslim, someone that worships Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to my fellow brothers, to my parents, and to the ummah at large?
Yes, our definitely obligations and our duty is not to sit back and relax. Not just because we are not obligated and we don't have to physically push ourselves and go to the houses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we should take it. And concession doesn't mean that you sit back and relax, but rather it means the opposite. We should sincerely increase our dua and our dhikr and our submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deeply and very sincerely to lift this pandemic and to cure us and everyone else from this pandemic, and to bring back things to its normal stage, because we always would love to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with what He mandated us with, right? Not with the concessions. So concessions are great, but they are to be utilized temporarily, but they should not be the norm. And we should increase our dhikr and dua and sincerity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to lift this pandemic and to cure all the humanity at large from it, so we can inshallah ta'ala go back to our normal stage of worship bi'idhnillahi ta'ala.
Ameen, inshallah. To make dhikr, do you have any dhikr or dua recommendations for us to make?
So there are actually many specific dhikr and dua that are specified for these kind of pandemics and times of trying and times of sickness, that you can protect yourself and protect your family with, and that you can increase your protection nowadays by saying them more, and they're all authentic. Inshallah ta'ala, again, I will share with you those. I will try my best, inshallah, also to see if we can bring the translation for him. I'm sure the translations are all online, because those are all authentic dhikr and hadith, but it's just gonna take us time to gather them together. So what I'll do, inshallah, I'll take it as an action item to bring these hadiths together with the English translation, put them all in one document and share them with you, inshallah. That would be my action item, I promise, inshallah.
Inshallah, that'll be very helpful. And once we're done with this document, inshallah, it will be uploaded to the raleigh-masjid.org website, as well as the Imam's Corner. And another option is, on the Imam's Corner, we have a special sign-up list where you can receive a quarterly mailer from the Imams. Mm-hmm. And during this time, we're going to step it up to a fortnightly. So every 2 weeks, the Imams will send out some beautiful documents such as these, some book recommendations. during this pandemic. And that's where we will include some of these questions. Once again, that is raleighmasjid.org/Imam's Corner, and stay in touch, inshallah.
Inshallah. Inshallah.
A final question is, what is the ruling for one who dies due to this pandemic?
So, as unfortunate as it is, this is something that we have to face, but the bright side of something that is as sad as it could be, especially on the person himself and the families of that passing person with this pandemic, with this disease. The bright side of it is that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave the glad tidings that anyone that gets inflicted with these type of pandemics or diseases and stay patient and they submit to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they do not go against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala of telling him, why did you do that to me, and why did you choose me out of all these people, and why do I have to go early, and what's going to happen to my family? You know, all these statements that we get very weak sometimes, and we end up, you know, addressing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with. But rather, Prophet ﷺ said, if anyone actually gets inflicted with this type or with these types of diseases, and they stay patient, and they continue to stay patient, and they end up actually passing and dying because of this disease, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said that these people are to be recognized as shaheed.
Okay.
They are shaheed, they are martyrs, and they are on a very high level of recognition by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Alhamdulillah.
And this, of course, would take us to a complete different chapter, and that is the Islamic rulings on funeral, janaza, how to treat people that actually died with this infliction, what rights do they have upon us, what do we do, do we go through normal procedure, do we skip many of these procedures, how do the family actually treat this, all these questions that I'm sure on the minds of many of you. Inshallah, we'll dedicate another session for it in the near future, inshallah.
Inshallah, that'll be very good. Now, we've received, alhamdulillah, a ton of beautiful questions on our YouTube live stream. Unfortunately, we're at 9 o'clock. Imam Omar, are you okay with us going another 10 minutes?
I'm okay, inshallah.
Inshallah. Is the YouTube chat okay with us going another 10 minutes? Just give us a thumbs up, give us a yes. So our first question is from, by the way, Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much for answering these questions tonight. And I apologize, we're breaking the social distancing norms here.
Oh, yes, inshallah.
It's more like 6 inches and 6 feet, but alhamdulillah.
Yeah. As long as you're okay. Alhamdulillah, as long as I'm okay, inshallah. May Allah, inshallah, protect us, ya Rabbi.
Ameen. So our first question is from Yasmin K, who asks, with regard to Jummah, and with us having so many blessed shifts, a lot of countries around the world, they only have one shift of Jummah because they have 4 more masjids. And as a majority Muslim countries, they take off time for this blessed Jummah. Now we have so many shifts. We have 3 at IAR. I know other masjids have 4 even. Is there a suggested or recommended shift to come for, or is there any reward between the shifts you go to, or are they all the same if you attend a different shift of Jummah?
Oh, so we're talking about normal days.
What is normal days?
Oh, normal days. Okay.
We're ignoring the pandemic now.
Okay. So during normal days, the question is there a preferable shift that we should attend, especially if we have flexibility? And the answer is yes. If we have flexibility in our schedule, we should always attend the shift that comes after Dhuhr prayer. Because the shift that is before Dhuhr prayer is again one of using the concessions and the relaxed rulings on it, where it did happen during the time of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, but it happened because of severe heat. And the scholars have used it as a qiyas, an analogy again, that if we have a need like we do have here, where the fire department does not allow massive or huge mass of gathering that would, go above the allowance of occupancy in any buildings, then you have no choice but to split it into many shifts in order to meet the regulations of the fire department. Otherwise, you're risking your masjid for absolute shutdown and closure. Now, because of that need, then you are forced to have one before Dhuhr prayer and one and two after. So if you have absolutely no flexibility and you have to attend the one before because of your work nature and your lunch time and what have you, lunch hour, then alhamdulillah you have the concessions and the ruling to do so. If you have flexibility, by all means you should push always to attend the one that comes during the time of Dhuhr time. Inshallah.
So at IAR, this would be
second shift.
The second shift.
Or third shift.
Or third shift. Mm-hmm. So second shift during a normal circumstance would be at 2 o'clock. And third shift would be...
Now it's at 3 o'clock.
At 3 o'clock, right, inshallah. Following up, we have another question about Salah from Hasna, Sister Hasna, I believe. Please correct me if I'm wrong there. They say their father recently moved to the United States and is asking if it's okay to pray without hearing the adhan, or if the person needs to recite the adhan before performing any salah.
So are we talking about at homes?
I believe so.
Okay. So the answer is the majority of the scholars consider calling the adhan as sunnah. It is something that is very preferable, but it's not mandated. That's the majority of the scholars. There are a few that actually consider it to be mandated. I would always adopt the methodology of, if I'm able to do it, always push yourself to do what is more preferable, because this way you are covered. So if you're at home and all it takes is 1 or 2 minutes to call the adhan, by all means call it. Remember, you are beautifully remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by saying Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. So you're actually getting a lot of reward. That's one. Second, you are really announcing to all household members that I am getting ready to pray. So you're giving them time to finish whatever, wrap up whatever they are being involved with, and just start the prayer with the iqamah if possible, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah. So I think that brings up a great point. You can skip the adhan, but the iqamah, that's necessary, right?
It's not mandated either. No, it's not because the what's mandated is really to start the prayer itself. That's the only thing that we can come comfortably to say it's mandated. But the scholars have said if the adhan is being skipped, the least you want to do is the iqamah. So they want you to actually start the prayer with the consciousness of being a little bit prepared. So it's very awkward for you to just Allahu Akbar and to start. You're not mentally, physically, spiritually prepared to connect with Allah.
You need to be in the right zone.
But as a fiqh rule, it's not mandated.
Okay. That's very good to know. Inshallah, that answers your question. Our next question comes from Sister Maha Ali. I think, actually, Sister Maha, inshallah, we answered your question about virtual khutbahs and the evidence for or against that. And then Brother Adam Genrola has mentioned that Amjad recently sent out an email and mentioned the permissibility of establishing Jummah in the home based on the position of the majority. I believe this was the one they sent out couple weeks ago about how you could establish Jummah with only 3 people if you're in the Hanafi madhab.
Yes, but I just would urge the brother to go ahead and read it again because I read it. So Amjad does not carry the position of allowing Jum'ah prayer to be performed at homes. They're very strict on it. So you might have missed on the terminologies. So they're allowing it with the minimum amount of numbers, but they still want it to be done and conducted at the places of worship, and that is the Masjid. I'm very sure about Amjad's position, so you can go ahead and read it again. If you still believe that this is your understanding, inshallah, you can connect with me and I will walk you through the verdict of Amjad. So it did specify the leniency of the number, no issues with 2 and above to perform Jum'ah, but at the places of worship, at the Masjid, not at homes.
Inshallah. I think that covers all the questions. I've just thrown a link into the chat of our live stream for tomorrow, so if everyone wants to go ahead and bookmark that. And one moment, thank you so much for answering our questions today. Do you think we'll see a full-on Salah workshop?
Inshallah. I think now that the coronavirus pushed us to go online and to go virtual, I have no excuses anymore of being so busy now. I'm focused more with you online, inshallah. So I have to be a tech savvy now. So
Exactly.
with Ashraf's help, with Kashif's help, inshallah ta'ala, we will inshallah conduct these so long wanted series, inshallah ta'ala.
Give us a preview of what was discussed. And this is the Salah workshop, is one of the first classes I attended at IAR.
MashaAllah.
There's a small preview to it, but could you tell us a bit more what goes into that class and what will we be covering hypothetically?
Sure. So as you all know, we're very passionate about Salah. It's something that comes that we were taught.
We just talked about it for an hour.
Yeah, it's like the most a passionate subject that everybody loves, because it's like the most loved worship act in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's really great to be knowledgeable about it. So the series of the rulings of Salah would really cover every step of the way, the prerequisites of what should come before Salah and how you do it right, and what's mandated and what's optional. How to start your Salah the right way, what really makes your Salah is a good Salah, or what makes it a not so good Salah, and what actually invalidates that Salah, because you want to be very careful that you're not doing things that you end up actually invalidating your own prayer. And it has many things of what's mandated, what's actually a pillar, and what's actually just highly recommended that brings beautification to the Salah itself, and so on and so forth. So the rulings of Salah are very detailed and lengthy, but of course remember, optional, more beautification to the Salah that brings more reward to it, and it makes you connect deeper with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on a high level. So by all means, we want to learn all those, but of course, because it is something very long, it takes a good amount of sessions to cover it all.
Alhamdulillah. I think I'm very excited for that, to understand the true depth and make sure my Salah is made with full intention and all of that. Inshallah. Just a couple more interesting people we see in the chat. Sister Radwa went for Hajj with you.
Yeah, Sister Radwa, mashallah.
Alhamdulillah. Anything else you'd like to add? Close us off with a dua, final comments?
Alhamdulillah, I think I want to thank you all for being so dedicated and for being so committed online, and being also passionate about the rulings of Salah. And by all means, I think we come all together as a team to help each other. So on a final note, I wanted to recognize our guest, Sister Radwa, who has really deeply helped me with the translation of what I shared with you tonight. We're also working on a Umrah ruling book, and we might end up actually doing a Hajj like booklet. So alhamdulillah, you are more than welcome to help us in any of your commitment, any talent that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed you with. The office of the Imam is really in need of all your help, your support. So that's my request, inshallah, in any way. Your dua is the minimum thing that we request of you. And inshallah ta'ala, your attendance is so much blessed and great, because it really motivates us to see that people people love to learn the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that motivates us, of course. When you see, lack of commitment and only few people that are willing to commit, it takes a lot of preparation, and then, by nature, you don't get as motivated when you don't see much interest around. But when you see a lot of interest, that by itself is a great support that you do. So one of the greatest things that you can help with is being committed and being dedicated to the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and being a dedicated and committed student of knowledge, that you strive, you love, you have so much thirst to seek knowledge and to get connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just give it very simple. And I'm going to end with this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to tell us and to inform us, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves the knowledgeable servant over the worshipper. Those who just worship him without knowledge. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves the one that actually worships him with knowledge. And another saying of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said the difference between a knowledgeable person and a non-knowledgeable person in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like the difference between the day and the night. You see, you just look at this, the difference between the day and the night. This is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves a knowledgeable person, exactly like you love the day, because you see better, you're focused better, you are more, inshallah ta'ala, motivated to do things during the day because of not having that uncertainty of what's coming, where we have it at night. So the difference between the day and the night is the difference between a knowledgeable and a non-knowledgeable, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves the knowledgeable person. So with that, inshallah, we end by asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless you all and to bring you closer to Him and to make you more knowledgeable and to allow you to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with full knowledge and with full certainty of His deen and way of life, and being so passionate about it and also being so committed to it. Allahumma ameen. And to make you and to elevate you among the highest level of, inshallah ta'ala, knowledgeable worshippers, so you can, inshallah ta'ala, meet Him on the day of judgment while He is pleased with you, and to allow us all to meet and to gather together with our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, because of the passion that we have to learn his sunnah and to learn his seerah and to follow his footsteps as possible, as we could, of course, to the best of our ability. اللهم اغفر لنا وارحمنا وعافنا واعف عنا. اللهم تقبل منا أعمالنا. اللهم تقبل منا دعاءنا. اللهم تقبل منا ذكرنا. اللهم تقبل منا صلاتنا. اللهم اغفر لنا ما قدمنا وما أخرنا وما أسررنا وما أعلنا وما أنت أعلم به منا. أنت المقدم وأنت المؤخر وأنت على كل شيء قدير. اللهم إنا نسألك العافية في الدين والآخرة. اللهم إنا نسألك العفو والعافية في ديننا. اللهم إنا نسألك العفو والعافية في ديني ودنياي وأهلي ومالي. اللهم استر عوراتنا وآمن روعاتنا واحفظنا من بين أيدينا ومن خلفنا وعن أيماننا وعن شمائلنا ومن فوقنا، ونعوذ بعظمتك أن نغتال من تحتنا. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. وصل اللهم وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless you all, and you have a great night, inshaAllah ta'ala.
Ameen. Just a reminder, we'll be here same time, same place tomorrow. It's 8 p.m. The Islamic Association of Raleigh's YouTube page. You can visit us at raleighmasjid.org/live. Tomorrow we have a special guest from Maryland. The Muslim Family Center will be giving us some advice and some pointers about what to do in this hardship time. And Thursday we'll be joined by a panel of doctors to answer your questions about coronavirus, inshallah.
Inshallah.
We hope to hear from you soon, inshallah. Jazakallah khair, and have a wonderful night.
Ameen ya Rabb, inshallah.